Good
Morning.
morning, everyone. Welcome to the January 23rd, 2026 meeting of the Montgomery County House Delegation. Today, we're going to have a briefing from Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, and then we will be taking up three local bills that have moved through our local committee process. So we'll first turn to our briefing, and I know that Chair Harris is here, as are a number of his colleagues from the planning board. And so, Chair Harris, I'm just going to turn it over to you and to your team for your presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Chair Polakovich-Carr and members of the delegation. Thank you for having us here this morning. For the record, I'm Artie Harris, Chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board. We are honored to be able to provide this annual update to the delegation. Our teams have been very busy over the year on behalf of our constituents, and we wanted to take this time to highlight some of the ways we've been engaging with our residents, key updates, and the state of housing. Before I turn it over to our two directors, I want to highlight a few items. First, this image before you. In September, I had the opportunity to play and take advantage of our wonderful resources, enjoy a Saturday morning kayaking in Black Hills Regional Park. If you haven't been out on one of our lakes, let's get you out there. I wanted to take a quick moment and share some highlights from our year. I'll go into more details in a moment, but our board has been able to conduct our first tour all together. We sent two plans to the council for their review, University Boulevard Corridor Plan and Clarksburg Gateway Sector Plan. We also continue to ensure that we are hearing and responding to the community through listening to more than 900 residents at public hearings and personally addressing almost 300 inquiries. These are inquiries that didn't get passed along to Montgomery Parks or planning for response. We also approved over 1,800 dwelling units. These units have all their approvals necessary to pull building permits. While I am very proud of the board for approving these, it is critical to note that this is less than half of the number of units we should be approving to reach the Department of Housing and Community Development's housing targets. Director Sartori will talk to this more shortly. The planning board is committed to a county that enables all residents to thrive. We are focusing on housing production, regional issues, including housing, transportation, and environmental issues, and implementing our two guiding plans, Thrive Montgomery 2050 and our Park, Recreation, and Open Space Plan called PROS. For the latter, we are committed to purchasing more land for parks and conservation. Just this past November, we opened the Royce Hanson Conservation Park at Broad Run, which includes almost 500 acres of land. Director Figueredo will speak to our park solar initiative later. In September, all members of the planning board were able to join together for a tour of the Clarksburg Gateway Master Plan area in advance of the public hearing we hosted later that week. It was our first tour conducted under the updates to the Land Use Code. As you may recall, Delegate Polakovich-Carr introduced legislation during the last session that relieved us of the requirement to live stream while out in the field for an educational tour. This shift enabled us to keep all other aspects of the Open Meetings Act while off-site. All commissioners were able to receive the same information at the same time. We are committed to ensuring that our meetings remain open to the public no matter where they take place. In this case, we had seats available on the bus for the public to reserve and also published the itinerary for people to join us at the different stops. Speaking of Clarksburg, we continue to expand our opportunities to meet the community where they are. We took our auditorium on the road again later in September to host our public hearing in Germantown near the community under discussion. We've also continued our placemaking initiative. Many of you were able to join us in Wheaton in June when we took over the parking lot adjacent to our building for the Wheels on Wheaton event. The excitement was so palpable that they even got me on roller skates. These placemaking opportunities give us a chance to connect on a deeper level with the community. From the visioning to the implementation, this is a community-driven process that encourages residents to think big and set the stage for vibrant and accessible communities. We also hosted our first graduation for the Community Planning Academy. You'll hear more about that later, and you should all have received an email last month on how residents can register. I also continue to focus on our role within the region. In July, Prince George's County appointed a new planning chair for their planning board, Daryl Barnes. We have been working to build our relationship, identify joint priorities, and collaborate. I've convened an additional breakfast with the chairs. This is a program I started to create opportunities for Planning Commission board chairs from across the region to share best practices and coordinate together. We'll be meeting again next month. Our board is committed to creating space for dialogue around innovative ideas and opportunities to address our priority issues, specifically around housing, environmental resiliency, and economic growth. Last summer, we brought together legislators, including our own Delegate Stewart, advocates, and experts to talk about the opportunity for single-stair construction. This building code change could create opportunities for more light-fill, larger bedroom units on smaller lots without changing any zoning. We look forward to seeing the report at the end of the year and for code changes to follow shortly thereafter. We are also developing a panel to discuss and address how we plan for climate change. We will have additional information on this panel in the coming months. All our speaker events are open to the public and recorded for on-demand viewing. Switching gears for a moment, I wanted to commend Montgomery Parks for a fantastic butterfly experience at Brookside Gardens. The butterfly experience returned after shutting down in 2020 during COVID. Brookside saw close to 40,000 visitors who were able to learn about over 75 species of butterflies that fluttered throughout the greenhouse. We had over 100 volunteers work on this exhibit, totaling nearly 3,150 hours. The board was lucky enough to get a behind-the-scenes visit with the butterflies during our annual board retreat. Staff turned this area of the conservatory into an oasis of calm reflection and wonder. I was impressed by the teamwork and collaboration of the staff to work through all of the USDA requirements to ensure that we are protecting all our butterfly guests, as importantly, protecting our native environment. As the exhibit closed in September, we learned that the remaining 550 butterflies are shipped across state lines to the butterfly atrium at Hershey Gardens, Pennsylvania, to continue engaging the public. This is just one example of the amazing programming from Montgomery Parks to ensure all residents have opportunities to connect to our natural environment. I'll now turn it over to Director Figueredo to share more Montgomery Parks updates and highlights.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Excellent. Thank you for having me. That picture on that opening slide is of the last snowfall we had at, I think it was in early December. That's Kensington Cabin Local Park. We are, of course, gearing up for some more snow, and we have our first snow emergency call this afternoon at 4, so we can get ready. I want to first thank the delegation for all its help in securing funding over the last several years. For the most part, these LBIs that you see here, they represent only a portion of a total project cost, but they are critical in helping us prioritize certain projects or otherwise enhance projects. Every year, it's a challenge for us in our capital budget to compete with MCPS and all the rest of the county departments for funding. This year's CIP is particularly acute. We asked for a very small increase in county funding this year, and the county executive released his proposed CIP this past week. We essentially got nothing we asked for. So I also have appreciated meeting with many of you over the last few months to discuss our fiscal year 27 legislative priorities. We are submitting 6 LBI requests this year and one major capital ask, which I'll touch on later. We have a 100-year-old park system across 37,000 acres. That's most of what our CIP funds. We have a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of very old infrastructure that needs updating and replacement. Here on this next slide, I want to highlight some of the signature park events that are happening across Montgomery County. Of course, the chair mentioned our butterfly experience, which opened reopened last year, but we've got our Sligo Creek Fest coming up. It's the third year we're doing this. First Saturday in May. This past year we had 10,000 attendees. And you can see there's some of the other events we have coming up. And then while most of our CIP does go to renovations and infrastructure maintenance, we do usually have some new projects coming online. Ovid Hazen Wells is the fulfillment of a longstanding commitment to create a recreational park in this community. That ribbon cutting will be in May, May 16th at 2. We've also got Bottle Works Lane Urban Park and Northwest Branch Disc Golf, which already opened, but we have a ribbon cutting coming in July. So during our meetings with many of you, a topic that often comes up is how do we do our outreach? So I wanted to share a brief look at how our staff engage the community. We put a lot of thought into this, and our outreach plans do depend on the scope and scale of the project, but also on the kind of information we're trying to share or to solicit. We have a very small outreach team. It's essentially one lead staff person, and you can see her here, pictured here. And we pride ourselves on innovative ways to reach the community because we know that the old methods, just have a community meeting and call it a day, don't really work anymore. They're not equitable. We don't get broad representation, and we don't really get even good information that helps us in designing and planning our projects. So this slide also just shows some of the outreach stats from last year. If you don't follow us on social media channels, I highly encourage you to. We are on all the platforms, including, of course, Instagram and Facebook. Our newsletter reaches about 60,000 subscribers, and that's got a lot of really great information in it as well. We try to be engaging, stay on top of trends, keep everything educational, but also very shareable because the goal is we're competing for everybody's eyeballs, just like everybody else. And we have information we want to share, and we want to make sure we capture people's attention. So on this next slide, I wanted to share what I thought was a really great way to convey to the public the importance of deer safety, particularly in the autumn during the rut. On the left, you can see a traditional post, very sort of basic information. And on the right, you can see something that's much more trend-driven and modern and uses humor to grab people's attention. It's the same message, but we're trying again to make it more engaging and memorable. So this next project's another example of meaningful community engagement. We acquired the site for this park in 2021 in downtown Silver Spring, and our goal was to get it done really quickly. It was a major new project, so we did have community meetings. They weren't your standard kind. Our main community meeting at the outset of the project was held in Denizens, which used to be, if you recall, right across the street from where this park is being built. Our goal was to meet people where they were and to get good, actionable information from them about what kind of amenities they wanted to see in this park and how they were going to use the park. And we did that. We also held an online forum to rename the park. It had been called, we were calling it the South Silver Spring Urban Rec Park, which it doesn't exactly, trip off the tongue. So we gave people three choices and they selected Bottle Works Lane Urban Park. It's a nod to the history of the area. And we had over 500 participants in that survey, which is a very high count. Sometimes our projects don't need to cost millions of dollars to have a big impact. The idea for this mural project you see here started with someone on our park development team who'd been working on improvements to the park, but really thought that this blank wall in the PAB just really needed to be zhuzhed up somehow. So with funding, it was about $30,000 that we got from the Montgomery Parks Foundation. We convened a panel, an art review panel. We put out a request for artists. Ultimately, they narrowed it down to 4 finalists. We put this out to a community vote, and you can see there that they selected a piece. It was created by a woman-owned mural art collective. I believe they're out of Baltimore. And it's called Rooted and Radiant. It shows images of flowers and animals, birds and butterflies from both Maryland and countries in Latin America, which is, of course, those countries are very highly represented in this neighborhood. And this past fall, we opened again our Northwest Disc Golf Course. This was built in response to really strong community demand. People wanted a disc golf course in Montgomery County. So we did hold a community meeting. You can see that there. Primarily, it was to notify the neighbors about what we were doing and share information with them. We also did an online survey that got around 200 responses. And the goal of that survey was to find out from the users what they wanted to see in the disc golf course. And that was very helpful to our disc golf course designer. A couple of years ago, we revamped our CIP engagement. We established a hearing in front of the planning board. It's at the outset of our CIP process before the Parks Department goes and develops a proposed CIP to bring to the planning board. We wanted to give the community the opportunity to weigh in and share with the board and with Parks, what do they want to see in our capital budget? So this past fall, we had over 500 total participants. That's both in person and virtual. There is a, pretty strong preference for online participation. I think it just helps people. It makes it easier for them. And we are trying to be flexible and make it easier for people to participate. So shifting to our couple of major parks priorities that are sort of their county-wide priorities. A few years ago, the planning board did approve a master plan update for Wheaton Regional Park. It is our most urban regional park and serves the most diverse community. It is about my age, so it needs a lot of improvements and updates. These are going to cost millions of dollars over the next few years. And that includes our planned Action Sports Park, which I believe at this point all of you have heard about. To help us with implementing this project, which we do believe it's going to be a statewide, if not a national draw. It's something entirely new in our system. We've never done anything like this before. The delegation, led by Senator Craig Zucker, helped us get a $3 million grant from the state last year. We are really grateful for that. And we've been engaging with the community to solicit feedback on design concepts for the Action Sports Park. We're going to have a detailed design to share. Unfortunately, we had requested about $4 million in GEO bond funding for this project in the current CIP. And this wasn't new money we were asking for. This was to swap out from program open space funding. We saw a reduction in that funding, which we rely on. So we had asked to swap in GEO bonds. The county executive's proposed CIP entirely eliminated that request, and it's going to affect our ability to implement this project unless we can get the council to restore that funding. In addition to Wheaton Regional Park, our other major countywide parks initiative is to double our solar energy production over the next 5 years with a mix of ground-mounted and rooftop solar. Currently, about 20% of the Parks Department's solar energy comes from solar. We want to increase this as the Parks Department. We are committed to environmental sustainability, and we believe we should be leaders in achieving the goals in the county's climate action plan, and also particularly on how solar can meet our energy needs. So we did request a $3.5 million grant from the state to help with this. We had also asked for $2.4 million in GEO bond funds from the county. And again, this request was entirely eliminated. Essentially, we asked for a very small increase and got none of it in this proposed CIP. And with that, I want to again thank the delegation for all of its support. Of course, the support that's financial, but also just in general, your advocacy for the work that we do. And we'll take any questions at the end. Thank you.
Well, Chair Polakovich-Carr, while we're switching over their PowerPoint here, I wanted to see, I see that Delegate Kaufman has his hand raised. I don't know if you want to go to that while we're transitioning.
I'm muted. Delegate Kaufman, did you have a question on the parks piece? Because we could take that one now.
Yes, I did. Mitty, it's good to see you. We used to work together. So it's great to see you in this wonderful new position. And Director Harris and thank you for all the work you're doing at Wheaton Regional Park and Brookside Garden. And both of you can answer, or one of you. I was just wondering about accessibility improvements that you've made, both at the park for people with disabilities, both at the parks level, and you mentioned the University Boulevard sector plan, which is in my district. And so, are you also evaluating ADA stuff for ADA compliance for master plans and things like that, and making pathways accessible for people with disabilities? So if you could just update me a little bit on what you've been doing the past year, both of you, on accessibility, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, I can start addressing that. We have in our CIP an entire project category. Our CIP is divided up into different project categories, and we have one that is entirely devoted to accessibility. We have been making, I would say, over the last 10 years, investing many, many millions of dollars to make sure that all our parks are, of course, ADA compliant, but we try to, even go beyond that and just try to think creatively and imaginatively about how our facilities can be accessible, but not just our facilities. We have an entire team, our program access team, that makes sure that for any of our parks events, they are fully accessible for everyone. Our team also plans special events that are focused around accessibility. And anytime we do a park project, anytime we're going to go into a park to make an improvement, we usually use that as an opportunity to, at the same time, enhance accessibility if we haven't done so previously. So this is something we are very much committed to, and thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, and also Delegate Kaufman, Jason may be able to give more details, but in all our master plans and sector plans, accessibility is a key component. It's in Thrive Montgomery 2050. It's one of our guiding principles to have all of our projects in the county accessible to all folks.
Well, and I think that's actually a good transition. I would say when we worked on the University Boulevard corridor plan, we wanted to make sure that we were engaging people from all communities. And so in particular, we did engage with residents of the Inwood House. And I think that, if you want to be able to make change that is important to, people of all, a diverse population, you need to make sure that you've talked to a diverse population. So I am going to go ahead and get started here. I wanted to thank the chair and the delegation. Always appreciate the opportunity to connect with you, to provide you with updates on our great work at the planning department, and to see how we can be helpful in your efforts. And so often when we meet with you, we get questions about our efforts to engage and inform your constituents on plans and development impacting their communities. So we wanted to begin this morning by talking about how Montgomery Planning engages the community in our efforts. In 2024, Montgomery Planning released what you see on the screen here, our Equitable Engagement Guide. It's a resource to our staff on the most current and most effective tools and strategies to ensure inclusive outreach and engagement. Our approach is community-centric and focused on making the department's work about the community. To do this, we do a deep dive on community values, their wants, their needs, and we do it in multiple forms and formats. Community by community, we identify ways to make it easy for people to participate by meeting people where they are. You've heard that a couple of times, but I want to talk about that both physically and virtually. We frame questions in different ways to more effectively communicate with different people and invite conversation. And we show community members how and where their input was applied or explain why it was not. So to that end, it's important for all stakeholders to understand that our recommendations on master plans or development applications are informed by more than just community input. As demonstrated in the graphic on this screen, our recommendations are formed at the intersection of community input with our expert analysis and external expert consultation. And overlaying all of this are the laws, the regulations, and guidelines that also inform our recommendations. An important thing to note is that this is really an oversimplification of how the pieces fit. In some cases, more emphasis is placed on community input, and at other times, it's necessary for us to place more of an emphasis on technical expertise. And even within that circle of community input, as you know, the community does not speak with one voice. So there are often many conflicting perspectives that need to be considered and weighed. I mentioned earlier the idea of meeting people where they are. So again, physically, we try to embed ourselves in our communities by going to places where people gather. Local events, farmers markets, parks, grocery stores. We hold meetings in the community and we canvass neighborhoods door to door. But we also need to engage people where they are in other formats, providing virtual options to participate in meetings or to provide feedback, using different social media platforms to connect with different people. And here you can see how we connected with community stakeholders through social media in 2025. Our posts to Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, and Nextdoor resulted in nearly 1.1 million impressions and more than 47,000 engagements, which include repostings, comments, and nearly 18,000 clicks on links. Montgomery Planning also has numerous newsletters that we push out to stakeholders via email on a regular basis. In 2025, we sent out e-letters to nearly 162,000 recipients, and nearly 85,000 of those were opened. That's a rate of 54%, which far exceeds the industry standard of 36%. People are being engaged. We also had more than 8,400 clicks on links in those e-letters. That's a 5% click rate, which exceeds the industry standard of 2%. And finally, one important thing to note is that our engagement strategy is ever-changing, and we're trying to adapt to community needs and to implement best practices. To help us with this, we recently conducted a countywide communication preferences survey to understand how residents want to receive information and how they want to be engaged by the planning department. And so you can see that the top 3 ways people want to receive information is through email, social media, and text messages. Now I'd like to give you an update on our Community Planning Academy. I've talked to a lot of you about this in the past, and as you know, the idea of pursuing a Community Planning Academy was a recommendation from the Development Review Process Work Group that was chaired by Delegate Lopez a couple of years ago. I'm extremely proud of this effort. It includes, Chair Harris talked about this a little bit, it's awesome. It includes 10 virtual on-demand modules on different aspects of planning, development, permitting, that residents and other stakeholders can complete at their own pace. So this is a flexible format that makes it easier than ever for community members to learn how they can effectively participate in the planning process and how they can get involved in shaping their neighborhoods. We also offer opportunities for participants to have touch points with planning staff and field trips to recently completed development projects. And twice a year, we're going to hold graduation ceremonies for people who have completed the entire course. So here are photos from the graduation ceremony that we held in October for the 57 people who participated in our beta testing cohort. This group completed an earlier version of the program to provide us with feedback that we then incorporated into updates that we made before we went live with the Academy on December 1st. In general, feedback has been very positive, and we're hopeful that this will result in the desired outcomes. As we see here, 98% of our summer participants indicated that they were more likely to participate in future planning-related activities. And at this time, we have 373 residents enrolled in the Academy, including 9 people who have already completed the full 10 modules. And now some quick updates on recent and upcoming master plan efforts. Over the past year, the Council approved and the Commission adopted several master plans, including the Downtown Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment, the University Boulevard Corridor Plan, the Countywide Master Plan of Highways and Transitways update, and an amendment to the Master Plan for Historic Preservation to designate Timberlawn, which is the former residence of Eunice Kennedy Shriver in North Bethesda, where she organized Camp Shriver, which led to and inspired the creation of Special Olympics. We have a number of plans that we're actively working on at the department, including the Clarksburg Gateway Sector Plan. This is currently under review by the County Council, as is the Rosebud House Amendment to the Master Plan for Historic Preservation. Rosebud was built in 1912 by founding settlers of several of the mid-19th century free Black communities in the Sandy Spring area. The teams working on Eastern Silver Spring, Friendship Heights, and Germantown are all currently working on emerging ideas or preliminary recommendations for their plans, and the Wheaton Plan update is just getting underway. Upcoming master plan efforts include updates to the Burtonsville and Kensington plans, and we have requested that the council add 2 additional master plans to our work program beginning in FY27. An update focused on the Damascus Main Street area and a countywide climate resilience master plan. So now I'd like to shift my focus to housing, recognizing that we continue to be in a housing crisis, not only here in the county and the state, but across the country. And knowing that once again, you're going to be seeing a lot of bills this session addressing housing, I thought that it would be helpful to provide you with some updated data describing housing in the county. And I will tell you that there's a lot here, and I'll zoom through a lot of it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to connect separately or to answer any questions you might have afterwards. So this is a graph you may recognize from last year. It shows the change in the county's housing stock since 1940, when 92% of our housing units were single-family detached homes. Now that percentage has been cut in half to 46%, and more than half of our housing units are in the form of townhomes or multifamily structures. However, more than 91% of the county's residential land continues to be dedicated to single-family homes. So this demonstrates what is obvious, that multifamily structures and attached homes represent a more efficient use of residential land. And when we are faced with a need for more housing in a county that is largely built out, and we need to accommodate growth in a smart, sustainable way, it is imperative for us to create more opportunities for multifamily, attached, and small lot development near transit, near activity centers, near existing infrastructure, near jobs, and near commercial centers. This map, using the same colors as you saw in those graphs, shows the location of all 400,000 plus housing units in the county. So you can see the clear prevalence of single-family homes across the county in the color purple. If you scan the QR code here, you can view a story map that shows the progression of residential development over the decades. And I mentioned the need for more housing. Population is growing in both Maryland and Montgomery County, even if it's not growing at the rate that we saw previously. However, over the last 6 decades, in both the county and the state, as you can see here, the average household size has fallen by nearly an entire person. And this is compounding our need for more housing, as smaller households mean that we need more housing units today than we needed previously, even if our population wasn't growing. So you can see on the right that we need 27 units to house 100 people in 1960s. What we needed today, we need 36 units to house every 100 people. Another phenomena that we are seeing in Montgomery County is the demolition of single-family detached homes. Since 2000, we have seen nearly 5,200 demolitions across the county. Over 1,200 of those demolitions have occurred this decade. And you can see in this map that there's a concentration of those occurring in the southwest corner of the county. However, it's notable that demolitions do occur throughout the entire county. It's also important to note that until recently, it was impossible to replace any of these single-family homes with anything other than another single-family home. And when older homes are being replaced, they're being replaced with much, much larger homes. New single-family detached homes today are nearly 2.5 times the size of the remaining homes that were built in the 1950s. This, again, is despite our smaller household sizes. So we have a tendency to build, and clearly there's a market for, bigger homes for smaller households. And one recent analysis we did on demolitions since 2011 showed that the average size of the original home was 1,500 square feet, and the average size of the replacement home was over 3,700 square feet. If we don't make the necessary changes now, we run the risk that our neighborhoods are going to lose the diversity that people cherish. Slowly, over time, neighborhoods will transform through the tear down rebuild process that will result in a loss of affordability in these neighborhoods. Even small, modest numbers of duplexes, triplexes, and small apartment buildings could help combat this. This graph demonstrates the effect that unit type has on home sales prices. Detached homes remain substantially more expensive than attached homes. In 2025, the average sales price of a detached home in Montgomery County was nearly $1,050,000. Meanwhile, the average sales price of an attached home, our townhouses and condos, was $483,000. And you can see that the gap there is widening. Another way to look at this is through the distribution of sales prices by unit type. This is updated information for homes that were sold in 2025. The blue bars show the distribution of the single-family detached homes that were sold in the county, just over 5,100 in total, in 2025. You can see that the largest share of home sales was in the $1 million to $2.5 million range. In dark orange, we now see the distribution of townhouse sales last year, a total of just under 2,100 units. You can see that the distribution is a little further to the left, lower on the price range, with the largest share in the $400,000 range. And now in light orange, you can see the distribution of nearly 2,500 condo and co-op sales in 2025. These are even further to the left, with the largest share of sales occurring in the $200,000 range. So what does all of this mean in terms of who can afford to buy a home in Montgomery County? I've talked a lot in recent years about the need for more housing that's attainable to more county households. And here using zip code 20910 in Silver Spring. I'm going to walk you through an example with updated data. If you've seen this before, this is the most recent data we have on this, of what we are seeing in every single zip code, every single neighborhood in the county when it comes to attainability. The typical home in the year 2000 in the zip code was valued at $245,000. Now, if you inflate that to 2024 dollars, it would be valued at $443,000 today. Using the assumptions shown on the screen, a $443,000 home today is comfortably affordable to households earning $112,000 or more annually. In other words, that typical home from the year 2000 would be comfortably affordable today. Chris, if you can go ahead and, oh, you've already, never mind, would be comfortably affordable today to 55% of county households if home values in this zip code had only increased at the rate of inflation. But in reality, the typical home in this zip code in 2024 was valued at $728,000, not $443,000. That's 64% more than the typical home value from 2000. And again, this is after adjusting for inflation. So what that $728,000 home, that's only affordable to those households earning $184,000 or more, which is only 33% of county households today. So home prices have increased so much that only 1/3 of county households today can comfortably afford to purchase the typical home in this Silver Spring neighborhood, whereas before we could, 55% of county households could. This graph shows you how this has all transpired, how the actual typical home value in the light blue up at the top diverged over time from the inflated home value in dark blue. And this is really what is making homeownership in this zip code attainable to fewer county households. And again, we've seen similar changes like this in neighborhoods all across the county. No single zip code has escaped this fate. All of our neighborhoods have become less attainable and essentially more exclusive. The graph might look a little different, but it's all the same story. So while every neighborhood has become less attainable than they were 26 years ago, there are still some wide ranges in affordability across the county. This is in 2022, the average home value spanned from $305,000 in Leisure World to over $1.3 million in Chevy Chase. So this graph shows the three communities with the highest home value in 2022, the three bars to the left, the three with the lowest, the three blue bars to the right, and with a comparison to the county average in orange and the US average in yellow. And we see the housing crisis demonstrated in other trends also. This graph shows how home purchases in Montgomery County have been financed since 2011. And at the bottom in the light blue, you can see the share of home sales that are purchased entirely with cash. After falling for a few decades down to 13 to 14%, the last 3 years have seen 22 to 23% of sales as pure cash sales. And this is a troubling sign for households looking to purchase their first home. It's tough to compete with people who can bring cash to the table. The other trend I would highlight from here is the dark blue second from the top. These are FHA-backed loans. These loans, which are typically utilized by first-time homebuyers, have become much less common in recent years. And while this again is a troubling sign for first-time homebuyers, it's also an indication of how expensive housing is in Montgomery County, as many of a large share of our housing has fallen outside the price limits of an FHA loan. Another trend that demonstrates the constrained for sale housing supply in the county is the average number of days homes for sale remain on the market. While we saw a slight tick up in 2025, and I just saw yesterday GCAR released data specifically for December, and I think the average had gone up to 30 days. We're still seeing historically low numbers with nearly half of all units that were sold in 2025. They were on the market for 10 days or less. And this is a sign that demand for housing in the county remains much higher than the available supply. This also is likely applying upward price pressures, which continues to make homeownership out of reach for many households. And here's a graph that demonstrates how homeownership rates in the county have changed generally in recent years. While homeowners continue to comprise the majority of county households, the homeownership rate declined from 69% in 2010 to 66% in 2022. And this is a change that can be partially explained by changing preferences, decrease in attainability, and the increase that we've seen in multifamily development in the county. But homeownership rates are not the same for everyone. Here we see persistent disparities in Montgomery County when it comes to race and ethnicity. White and Asian households continue to be much more likely to own a home in the county compared to Black and Hispanic households. Unchecked, rising housing costs have the greatest impact on potential first-time homebuyers, which are disproportionately more likely to be households of color. So we need to do more to create homeownership opportunities for those who have not historically tapped into this important wealth-building tool. And here's another way to look at the racial disparities in homeownership in the county. Non-Hispanic white households make up 47%, and Black households make up 19% of all county households. However, among homeowning households, non-Hispanic households represent a disproportionately high share at 56%, and Black households represent a disproportionately low share at 11%. For this to be proportionate, the light blue columns should match the dark blue columns. So now let's look at average turnover rents for multifamily units in Montgomery County over the last decade. So you can see that rents dropped slightly in 2020 during COVID, but have bounced back. The average rent in the county last year has held steady at just over $2,100. Now, these blue bars show the change in average rents year over year. The decrease in rent that we saw in 2020 was offset by a large increase in 2021 after COVID rent restrictions were lifted. And it should be noted that the county's rent stabilization law took effect in 2024, and the rent increase allowance for that year for applicable properties was 6%. The current allowance through the end of June of this year is slightly lower at 5.7%, but you can see the rates that we're seeing of increase are significantly lower than those limits. Here's another set of graphs that show that between 2010 and 2022, the increasing cost of housing was most impactful to renters. On the left, in orange, you can see that the average housing cost for renters increased 40% during that time period, which well outpaced inflation during this period and was more than 2.5 times the increase for homeowners on the right. And I suspect that more current data would better capture the recent increase that we've seen over the last few years in mortgage interest rates, and we would see a larger increase in those blue bars representing increased costs of mortgages today. Nevertheless, this demonstrates a rising inequality between homeowners and renters. Rising housing costs disproportionately affect renters and place additional economic challenges on those households, including their prospects for future homeownership. But again, not all communities have seen the same increase in renters' cost. This graph shows a subset of communities, all of which have at least 25% renter-occupied households. And while some communities, including Redland, Shady Grove, Chevy Chase, and Tacoma Park, have experienced greater than average increases in gross rent, others have experienced below average and inflation equivalent, which is 29% over this time period, in terms of increases in rent. And understandably, there are many factors that contribute to the rising cost of housing in the county, but among the biggest drivers are the simple rules of supply and demand. People want to live in Montgomery County with our great schools, our diverse neighborhoods, cultural resources, access to jobs, and community amenities like our wonderful parks. But we are just not producing enough housing to meet the demand. These blue bars show the number of units that have been permitted each year since the year 2000. On average, over this time, the county has issued building permits for 2,562 units per year. But in 2025, the county saw under 1,300 units permitted, the fewest that we've seen since the Great Recession. In 2019, the council signed on to regional housing targets established by Washcott, and those set an aspirational goal of building 41,000 new units in the county this decade. 31,000 of those are in the county at large, with 10,000 unit target for Gaithersburg and Rockville. For the county, we're a bit off track, meaning that our target for the next 4 years is 4,000 units per year, and that's a level that we haven't seen since 2001. And earlier this month, DHCD released annual targets for each county and municipality in the state, shown here for us in the gray bars. And I can tell you, you can see it, these are quite unrealistic, given our historic levels of production, but even more so given current market conditions and the climate. There are just too many headwinds for us to be able to hit these targets. But let's dig a little bit deeper in what we've actually seen on the production front recently, so we understand that better. So this graph shows the units permitted the last couple of years by quarter by unit type. And you can see that the largest share in the dark blue has been multifamily units. However, that changed recently. We just saw 4 consecutive quarters during which essentially no multifamily units were permitted. The few that we saw were not in traditional multifamily buildings. Most of these were units in what we call 2/2s, which essentially are a 2-story townhouse above another 2-story townhouse. But I can tell you that 1/4 of suppressed production would be a cyclical matter. That's not unheard of. 2 consecutive quarters is not really normal. 3 consecutive quarters was concerning. 4 consecutive quarters is only something that we've seen previously during severe economic downturns. And now, in what may appear to be a positive sign, we did see a break in this pattern with a significant increase in multifamily units finally permitted last quarter, 518 total, which brought the 2025 total, the 4 consecutive quarters there, to 602 multifamily units permitted. Now, I say may appear to be positive because if you dig a little deeper, you can see that the vast majority of those 602 units that were permitted, multifamily units permitted in 2025, were income restricted affordable units. Now, this is a good thing because we need more affordable units in the county, but it's emblematic of a troubling trend that the few multifamily projects we've been seeing move forward to construction recently have been only those ones that are deeply subsidized with county or state resources. Even the 114 market rate units that you see in the last column there, all of those come from a single project that is 50% affordable. Now, I'll try to preempt a question we often get when we talk about these data, and that's by showing you how our numbers compare to our neighboring peer jurisdictions. Whereas the other data I've shown come from our own county partners at the Department of Permitting Services, to look at other jurisdictions, we need to look at what is available from the census. And so at this time, the census is only reporting through October of last year, at which point we were sitting at only 54 multifamily units permitted. With the exception of Fairfax, these numbers are all slightly down from recent averages, and that's kind of a sign that the regional housing market is somewhat deflated. However, the drop-off in Montgomery County has been the most striking. In Fairfax, this count that you see here is pretty consistent with the annual permitting levels that they've seen in recent years. So what are our prospects for seeing a significant turn in the tide? We recently completed a project to get a better sense of what was in what we previously referred to as the pipeline. So we've stopped calling it the pipeline because it suggested in some way that these units were inevitably going to happen, that they were inevitably going to be built. Something that's in the pipeline sounds like it's about to happen. And in interpreting it that way, it was misleading, and because people, we know that many of these units, especially those that only have partial approvals, will actually never be built. So this is a screenshot of our new development tracker. It's an online tool that allows anyone to analyze and dissect projects that have approvals in a number of different ways. So I'll show you a little bit of the data of what we found as we looked at this. As of September 2025, we have approximately 27,000 unbuilt units that have at least a partial approval. Within that total, about 13,500 units have received all necessary planning approvals, making them the most advanced in the process. These are units that are closest to moving forward, but still, full approval doesn't mean immediate construction. These projects still need to secure financing, complete architectural and engineering plans, and obtain building permits before development can begin. So the remaining units between these two numbers have partial approvals and are at earlier stages in the process. Among those projects with full planning approval, that 13,000, about half of the unbuilt units received their most recent approval in the last 5 years. So these are the units that we are most hopeful will come to fruition. However, again, we know that from history that some of these units will be the ones that appear further down to the right in the bar graph in future analyses. Some will never be built for a variety of reasons, including ownership changes, market changes, difficulty in securing financing, or other just priorities change for the owner. And another important attribute, and you've seen this in some of the other graphs I've shown, of the projects that have both full planning approval and that have any level of approval, is that the vast majority of these units are multifamily. So our review of development approvals also included a survey and extensive interviews with the owners of many of these approvals. published the insights from these conversations in a report that we posted to our website last fall, and we presented them to the county council. First, we heard that market conditions are brutal. Very few projects are penciling out given the interest rates, valuations, construction costs, and rents. And this is further challenged by the regional economic outlook and the overall reduction in capital flowing into real estate investments. And finally, expectations for a tepid job market are also cooling interest in advancing projects that have approvals. We also heard continued concerns about the development and permitting review processes. People noted that the process takes too long and exposes projects that to the risks that are inherent to an uncertain future and the evolving market conditions. And some of the folks we talked to praised the process improvements that we've already implemented, including our expedited development reviews and expedited permit reviews, and suggested that we try to expand some of those programs. And I'm happy to discuss any of those efforts if you have questions about them. And lastly, many folks that we spoke to called for policy responses to help smooth out this down cycle. People praised the office to residential pilot, the recent tax abatement program that was adopted by the county council, and suggested that expanded incentives to improve, we should expand incentives to improve financial feasibility. They also indicated that elements of the county's rent stabilization policy, particularly the lack of permanent date certain exemptions for new construction, has had a chilling effect in the capital markets. And some suggested that policy framework should better reflect a broader shift away from a model predicated on exactions from growth toward policies that could spur new growth, given the current economic conditions and the trajectory of the county's economy. And now I'd like to close by highlighting two of our current housing efforts at the Planning Department. Here you can see some recent data released from the Census Bureau showing the distribution of home values across the county, state, and the country. Just looking at the top category, the darkest blue at the top there, 21% of our housing stock is valued above $1 million, according to the census. And that's compared to only 6% across the state and 8% across the country. 70% of our homes are valued above $500,000. These data help set the context for the housing needs assessment and housing preferences survey that are currently underway at the Planning Department. The assessment is designed to provide a clear, detailed, very data-driven understanding of our current housing landscape. It will identify our current and future housing needs by type of unit, size, price point, and stage of life. And then we'll be working with our partners at the University of Maryland to assess how well that housing stock meets our existing housing stock meets that need, and this will help guide future planning and policy efforts in the county. And the preferences survey is an opportunity for us to capture statistically valid data on the types of housing our residents desire, but also a better understanding of people's experiences with housing in Montgomery County, the trials, tribulations, and victories that they've had. We often hear as we have conversations about housing policy, do you even know if people want this type of housing? Well, we hear anecdotal stories, but we're trying to now get some data behind all of this. So with that, I think that is the last slide. I thank you for this opportunity to do a deep dive on housing in the county. I'm happy to follow up on anything you saw that I zoomed through, but hopefully something there will be helpful as you consider some of the upcoming housing legislation this session.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for giving such a deep dive. I think it's really important context given the ongoing conditions in Montgomery County, and especially given that housing has been a big issue in the legislature the last few years, and the governor's announcements in recent weeks and months on tackling more on the housing policy front. So colleagues, if you have questions, please use the virtual raise hand function and we'll get a queue going. We'll start with Delegate Spiegel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jason, and the whole team for that great presentation. I think the data is pretty striking in terms of the chasm between the goals and the need on the one hand, and what's actually been happening in recent months and years on the other hand. I also reviewed the pipeline analysis. I guess we're not calling it that anymore. The development analysis, or whatever the new name is, and the recommendations in that document. And I appreciate the fact that you are shining such a spotlight on the challenges on supply and affordability and unit type makeup and market forces, and also the impacts of local land use regulations. And actually, just last week, our delegation also discussed the significant drop off in impact tax revenue due, at least in part, to inactivity in residential construction. So you all do a great job of delving into the data, but recognizing all of that and that we need kind of an all hands on deck approach to this major challenge and that Montgomery planning has limited resources, do you think it would be helpful if we could possibly mobilize some state agency resources to assist you in analyzing these complex issues affecting housing in the county?
That's a wonderful question, Delegate Spiegel. Mitty talked about just the capital budget. We anticipate a very similar fate in terms of the operating budget when that comes out in a couple of months. We have a number of initiatives that we're trying to pursue that we would like to pursue that we just don't know if we're going to have funding for. So any way that we could, tap into resources that might be available at the state, we're going to be starting to look for, in our case, wherever we can, alternative funding to advance some of the housing policies, even some of the efforts that we want to do on climate resilience and adaptation. These are things that we just haven't been able to advance because of a lack of funding. We'd be happy to talk about other opportunities.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Delegate Chi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jason, and the leaders from the Program Planning Department. This is super informative and very insightful. Thank you so much. So starting this session, I am serving the Housing Subcommittee, which is now part of the Economic Matters Committee, which is exciting and also complex. I hope you will also consider joining other counties to come together in front of our Economic Matters Committee to give our colleagues a good rundown of the challenges, especially those urban communities face, like in Montgomery County. So my question is related to the 2025 drop-off that you were talking about. I think you touched upon that in terms of how certain policies might be perceived as having a chilling effect investors and developers in terms of their willingness to enter or pull out the market. But if it was that much of a dramatic drop, there has to be some direct correlation, right? So I wonder if you can speak to that. And also, in recent years, the state of Maryland overall has passed a few, not enough, housing laws to expedite and streamline, permitting processes and all that. I wonder if you can also comment on whether or not you can see the impact of that. It's probably too soon, but would love to know how we can be either an enabler or impediment to housing development.
Sure. So I'll kind of tackle the last one first. There were a couple of bills that were introduced and adopted, I think 2 sessions ago, following the work of the Development Review Process Work Group that did help with expediting the process. So part of the process is the signing of plats. We can now do those electronically. We can also allow an applicant to move forward while they're waiting for all of the plat signatures to be gathered. So it sounds silly, but reducing 2 or 3 weeks from the process is very helpful. There are a number of other things that we've done locally that we're trying to cut down the process. So something that could take a year, we've now cut down to a 65-day review period in certain circumstances. And we're trying to work very closely with folks at MCEDC to kind of align our policies and our efforts with their economic priorities for the county. So we're having a number of conversations around that. In terms of the correlation, we haven't done that level of analysis. We just can see the data. We've just tried to report on the data. And when it comes to the connections to production and some of the local housing policies, that's what really came out in our interviews with the people who have these approvals of why they weren't moving forward. And some of them, what we really learned, to be, fully upfront here, is that there is no one singular cause that is preventing an individual project or a whole bunch of projects from moving forward. It's a combination of a bunch of different things. But we repeatedly heard concerns about the chilling effect was the term that we heard a lot of things like rent stabilization on the ability for a project to be able to get the financing that they need to secure after they've gotten their approvals. So even after they've gone through our process, now they're trying to get all that lined up, and that's where it's had an effect, is what we're hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Foley, just a heads up that Delegate Wallach is going to be next, and then it'll be you. She's having some issues with her raise hand function, so we'll go to Delegate Wallach next.
Thank you, Chair Polakovich-Carr. Thank you, everyone, for the presentations. Lovely to see all of you. I have a couple questions, if you would allow. First, to Chair Harris. I've been engaging with the Montgomery County Commission on Aging, and they have brought forward an idea around universal design. And I'm looking into that. The proposal that they have brought forward is with regard to making sure that new people who are learning how to do design are well versed in universal design, so they have the technical abilities to put together such proposals. And I wondered, on your end, is that something that you all have expertise on, assessing and supporting?
Yeah. So I'll start out and then I'll have maybe Jason follow up because he works on it day to day. Yeah, we're very interested in that, and we would love to speak with them to see to educate them on what we have been doing and connect them with folks that may have lots more experience in that. You know, there are some architects that have a lot of experience in that, but yes, that is something that's brought to our attention, and we'd love to speak with them more. So if you can connect us with them, we'd love to speak with them.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. So we'll take that offline. And my second question is to Mr. Sartori. Thank you for your presentation. I had a billion questions pop into my mind as you were presenting. It's a topic that does that, I think, for many of us. When you were showing the cost to own a couple decades ago versus now, the question, oftentimes being policy folks, we look at the levers that we have, which are zoning, among other things, permitting you spoke to earlier. But there are some forces very much in play right now, which is just cost of labor and cost of materials are, skyrocketing. So what does the cost to build look like, right? And my sense is a lot of that is then being transferred to the consumer. I don't believe there's a huge profit margin that's being built. In fact, that is why probably part of the reason we're not seeing the construction happen, because the numbers don't make any sense. So from a policy perspective, when it comes to labor and construction costs, what, if any, ideas do we have on the table to consider those? That's my first question. The second question is FHA loans. I understand, of course, they are from the federal government. Is there anything being done to try to have those loans, the range of the kinds of properties that are eligible for FHA loans, for that to be expanded? I don't know what the threshold is. It might be 500,000, maybe 750, whatever that threshold is on the federal level. Are we thinking about increasing that so that that loan can be leveraged, more to more people and more homes?
So these are good questions. I like that they're focused on how can we make improvement, not just take it all in. I don't know if I have great answers for you with regard to the cost of construction. Generally, the cost of a home, the greatest contributor to that cost is the value of the land. And so a new home in different parts of the county, the actual construction piece is going to be relatively the same. But so you can imagine when that fixed cost, if you will, of how much it costs to build, the labor, the materials increases, it'll have a bigger effect on the overall cost of housing where it's less expensive in the county right now. But We're also hearing stories that things like the tariffs are having are contributing to the increased cost of construction and the materials that we need. So in terms of what we can do on that front, we haven't prepared any thoughts on that. I can talk to some folks on our team, but that's, I mean, that's that's a global kind of market condition that we're experiencing that, at least for us at the planning department, is kind of above our pay grade in some way. And then with regard to the FHA loans, I was just trying to take a look to see what those limits are. Maybe someone else knows and can chime in, but I'm not aware of any attempts right now. Again, I think, you know, support from the federal government in this kind of area is a little bit more lacking at this time too.
Thank you. And next, oh, I'm sorry, Delegate Wall, did you have another question?
I was just going to say thank you, and maybe that is something worth engaging our federal delegation on as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Harris and Mr. Satori for being here and for all the great information. And to a deep dive into an issue that's really important. My question is more of a request. So here in the General Assembly, we have been passing legislation, or at least working on legislation, and we will do the same this year, around transit-oriented development and transit-oriented housing. I think it would be useful to us if we had some kind of picture, like a deep dive picture. We don't have to go into it today, but a deep dive picture on where we are with that in Montgomery County. I know that would help me a lot in trying to navigate some of this legislation that's out there. Thank you.
Yeah,
we can talk if there are certain data points that would be helpful, and we can talk about, you know, how do we define transit? How do we buffer? How distance from transit? What do you want to look at? Certain data? Do you want to see certain maps? We can help prepare some of those.
Yeah, yes, if you can.
Great, thanks very much.
Yeah, we can have more details so that we can better give you what you need. Like, we can talk offline, and we'd love to provide that information to you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Foley. That's a great suggestion. I don't see any other hands raised from colleagues. I do have a question, Jason. I don't know if it's possible to pull your slides back up, but I just wanted to make sure I was know if I'm comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges in some of the production data. So you had like a slide that had the bar chart of the historic production data by year, and then the goals set within COG and for DHCD. Do those numbers include Rockville and Gaithersburg's productions or housing goals? I think it's a little deeper in the presentation. Here, there we go. Slide
Sorry, I was muted
35.
there. Yeah. Okay. So the goals that you see on here, those are the numbers for that don't include Rockville and Gaithersburg. So that nearly 8,000 by 2030, that's the DHCDs. There's a more on top of that they're attributing to Rockville and Gaithersburg. So yeah, their numbers are even higher.
They're even higher. Oh, countywide. Okay, thank you. And then same for your development tracker. That is just the projects that you all are handling. That's not Rockville and Gaithersburg. Is that right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Colleagues, last chance for questions. Okay, not seeing anyone else. Thank you all so much again for the presentation. Very much appreciated. And you know, we'll stay in touch here on some of those follow-up items.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, colleagues, so we will now move to the next part of our agenda. We do have 3 local bills to take up in delegation today. As a reminder, you do need to be on camera to be recorded as voting for any of the bills. So giving the warning now so that people can get themselves on camera. We are going to turn first to our report from Chair Foley for the Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a pretty simple bill before us today from our committee. It's MC 17-26. It passed the committee unanimously, favorable. It involves community choice aggregation pilot programs, and this alters the dates. So basically, we passed the community pilot choice or community choice aggregation pilot program in 2021, and the dates were not met. So what this bill does is it extends the required start date by a year, extends the project length by a year, and extends the required reporting dates. So I move favorable, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion made by Delegate Foley, seconded by Delegate Kaufman. Any discussion or questions on this bill? And again, a reminder to please put your camera on if you are going to be voting. Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of MC 17-26, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anyone
I'm frozen, I
opposed?
think. I'm frozen.
Okay, Delegate
Uh,
Mercury North, if you'd like to give a verbal since you are frozen, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm
Verbal vote.
frozen. I'm frozen big time, but it's an I. I'm
Thank
still
you.
frozen.
We hear you. Okay, that was unanimous. So thank you all. Next, we are going to go a little out of order here on the agenda, and we're going to go to the report from the Education, Elections, and Housing Committee, Chair Ziegler.
Madam Chair, we have one bill that we voted out yet again. We have done this many times. It is enabling legislation to allow ranked choice voting in Montgomery County, MC1. Move favorable on the bill.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Chair Ziegler, seconded by Vice Chair Kaufman. Is there any discussion or questions on MC 1-26? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
I, if I
And we've
heard.
got you, Delegate Miraku North.
Okay.
Anyone opposed?
Okay.
All right, that bill also passes unanimously. And our last committee report, Chair Spiegel for Land Use, Transportation, and Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill MC 17-26. I'm sorry, that's the wrong number. Bill MC-526 is the Stop Sign Monitoring Systems Pilot Program legislation that is sponsored by Chair Polakovich Carr as well as Delegate Vogel and myself. This is very similar to a bill that the delegation passed unanimously last year that would have created a stop sign camera pilot program throughout Montgomery County. That bill was amended so that within Montgomery County, only Tacoma Park was covered and allowed to proceed with the pilot. So this year's bill adds the cities of Gaithersburg and Rockville to that existing pilot program. It still includes all the usual public notice of the locations where such cameras would be in use during the pilot, same as speed cameras. And the city of Gaithersburg and Rockville would be required to report to us and to the governor on the use of the systems in their jurisdictions if they decide to proceed with using those systems as part of the pilot. And our Land Use, Transportation, and Public Safety Committee voted unanimously to recommend a favorable report on this legislation. So unless there are any questions, I would move favorable.
Second.
Thank you. So moved by Chair Spiegel, seconded by Delegate Warman. Any discussion or questions on this legislation? Recognizing Delegate Solomon.
Sorry, Madam Chair, couldn't find my unmute there. Just a question for the subcommittee chair. Appreciate the bill and was very supportive countywide last year. I had a number of constituents reach out because they were concerned that obviously the bill got amended last year. I was just curious if there was any conversation in the subcommittee this year about attempting countywide, or has that ship sort of sailed until the municipalities sort of pursue their. Very excited that Rockville is interested in doing this, but have some constituents who live in unincorporated areas who were concerned that the county was left out.
Yeah, all I can say is that in an unusual process, in the procedural history of the bill last year. It was amended to include Baltimore City in the House and then amended in the Senate to limit the application in Montgomery County to only the city of Tacoma Park. I do think maybe there were some concerns about by some members about its application in other parts of Montgomery County, but there doesn't seem to be much concern by the cities of Rockville and Gaithersburg, and they support and want this authority. And that's how it ended up taking the form that it has taken this year. But I understand your concern, delegate, and certainly my personal view is I would love to see over time that the pilot expands to the rest of the county. I'll defer to Chair Polakovich-Carr if she has anything to add on that point, since she's worked a lot on that issue.
Yes, I will just note that the county-wide version of the bill last year that Delegate Charkoudian brought passed our delegation, our House delegation, unanimously. So clearly on the House side, we are supportive of enabling this county-wide. It ran into some issues in that posture in our Senate delegation. So if folks care a lot about this, I would encourage them to speak with their senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to get on the record registering my concerns, and glad that the city of Rockville and Gaithersburg are interested in pursuing this. Thank you.
Okay, other discussion or questions? Not seeing any. We have a favorable motion on the table for MC 5-26. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Noted for Delegate Mercury North's
Thank you, Madam
audio.
Chair.
We
Yeah.
understand the internet's
Yeah.
not always great here.
Not great.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so that bill also passes unanimously. That is it for our bills for this week. Let me turn to our committee chairs for announcements about upcoming meetings.
I'll go. The Economic Development Committee does not have any meetings scheduled. Please stay tuned, watch your email in case we get some more bills from Prince George's or elsewhere. Thank you.
That's right. Delegate Foley's committee at the moment has cleared its drawer. Next, Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will be meeting at noon on Wednesday. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair Spiegel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Land Use, Transportation, and Public Safety Committee will be meeting Monday via Zoom at noon. Hopefully everyone will be safe wherever they are during the storm or the fallout from the storm then. We will be discussing Delegate Foley's crosswalk monitoring bill and possibly having a further discussion on housing issues.
Thank you. And Chair Mercury North, do you have an update?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for the tech issues that remain. The Metro Washington Committee will be meeting on Monday at 1:30 to discuss PGMC 104-26. Hopefully we'll have quorum to possibly vote, but the very minimum we'll have a work session.
Thank you very much. Any other announcements from any other delegation members? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.